Hello there, you beautiful people. My name is Willow, and welcome back to Supreme Commander of Forged Alliance Forever, where today we're going to be looking at a Step-Stool laddercast. Oh, it's future Willow here to make something make sense. I don't know, I'm super tired. Okay, so it's been a while since I've uploaded. I'm going to explain that here in the middle of this video. If you don't want to see it, there's a time code that you can skip to. Either way, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about what's going on. First off, I'm not dead. Yeah, there we go. And then after that, I guess what we need to talk about is content moving forward and streams and videos. I've decided casting is going to go back to me recording without Twitch streaming, and my Twitch streams are going to be more of me playing other games. There will still be Twitch VODs going onto the channel of various things, and I'm also going to try and put out more casts and such in future, and I really apologize for the slow content outroll of July, and yeah, that's about it. I'm really hoping to hit 1,000 subscribers before 2022, and yeah, that's just tired Willow talking. But yeah, I'm gonna try and stream on Thursdays. It's gonna be various games. If you want to come talk to me and hang out, cool. Twitch.tv/FBN Willow's Duality. And yeah, that is about it. Let's get into the cast. And it's going to be played on the map Vulcan's Reach. This is indeed a ladder game. It is indeed played by players around 1,000 rating or below, and it's going to be a fun one. Now, I don't have anything to say. If I do have something to say, I'm sure it's already been said, but yeah, words, editing. Why am I stalling? I'm not stalling anymore. Like and subscribe. We're going to go ahead and get into introducing the players in the top left with our first player, a red UEF. He's been on Step-Stool before and in possibly one of the best casts of all time. His name is, of course, Sub-Q, and he is going first land. Then down to the southeast, we do have a blue opponent who is also a UEF. He is indeed very out there. His name is WackyWombat, and he has started first land. Let's take a look at the map. We do have some expansions for these players. There's mexes kind of spread out around this circle in the middle and just kind of on the periphery of it, but the main expansions are going to be down here in the bottom left and top right, where we can see 6 mass extractors in total, a hydrocarbon. It's very, very important to grab at least one of these. If somebody gets 4 mech spaces, they're gonna be in a good spot. So we'll have to see how these players manage to expand. Overall, there's about 15,000 or 14,000 actually reclaim on the map for these players to suck up. We're gonna have to see who sucks more by the end of all of this. Let's just go ahead and check in on the openers. We do have a pretty conservative opener coming out from WackyWombat, not rushing a hydro. The hydro is pretty far away, deciding to focus more on getting up a stable power base first. 5 PGens, 2 factories. He's going to have his production up quite early. Meanwhile, on the other side, we can see Sub-Q went for the opposite strategy of rushing that hydrocarbon. And overall, what that's going to mean is that Sub-Q is slightly ahead on his power economy so far. He's about to have trouble with stalling, or not stalling, with overflowing his mass. He needs to find a way to start spending that, get more factories in production, and get his engineers building a little bit more, not have as many reclaiming for a moment. WackyWombat, on the other hand, also still managing to balance. He hasn't overflowed either, neither player overflowing, and it looks like Sub-Q has just now managed to get his economy set up with itself, going ahead and grabbing up more production, using more mass a second. I'm totally not in here messing with sound because it's too damn quiet. No, that's not what I'm doing. Either way, we have ourselves a game. An air factory. I believe this is the first air factory of the game, going to be built by WackyWombat. The early aggression is kind of limited to just Sub-Q, sending out a Mech Marine and Snoop. This is a 10x10 map, and the players spawned in opposite corners, so it's gonna mean that it's a bit harder to get out and get some harassment damage done. There is a Striker and a Snoop out for WackyWombat to try and catch out exactly this, and it does look like it will be successful. The Mech Marine may be able to get away. I don't know if WackyWombat sees the Mech Marine, and no, he does not, so there's a chance that we see an engineer kill out of this Mech Marine, and it does look like WackyWombat's now sending his comm to the northeastern expansion. He's going to expand north And if Sub Q tries to expand south, that means both these players will be expanding kind of in parity. We have some units now out from WackyWombat heading over towards this southwest expansion that could be a contention point for these players. We also have signs of an expansion possibly over here with the engineer and some armored support to try and possibly go out here and expand. A mass extractor being built by the comm of Sub Q, keeping those comms busy. It's what you like to see. WackyWombat also sending the comm out to build a mass extractor. I personally don't think this is the way to expand. I would rather just get my comm out here straight, just walk here, don't stop to build anything, get the comm there as fast as possible, and then build a factory followed by mexes and infrastructure around it. I think that it's much more important to get the comm to the expansion way before your opponent. That way you ensure that you win the expansion trade. Over here in the southwest, we see more units out from WackyWombat heading down to this expansion point. We'll have to keep an eye on that. The first air units flying around, just a couple of interceptors and a scout that will be able to see exactly what's going on for these players. A lot of production now coming online for Sub Q. He's up to almost 5 factories. Meanwhile, in the south side, we're about to have the 5th factory for WackyWombat come online land-wise. We have an air factory queued up, but not quite in the productions yet for Sub Q. Sub Q going to be behind on the air game for the foreseeable future. A bit of an engagement between 2 strikers as they are ships passing in the night, neither of them managing to do too much of significance. I guess that the striker out from Sub Q did take a shot, and it missed its shot on WackyWombat striker, so that is a little victory. Got to take those where you can get them. WackyWombat continuing to move his comm north and build each mechs along the way. Yet again, I would have just sent an engineer with the commander, just have the engineer build the mexes, get the commander to the expansion, and get some unit production online. But these players are now at the 5-minute mark, almost 6-minute mark. They have their production started. They're building quite a few units, and we're going to have to see exactly how they decide to destroy each other, see if there's any crazy or amazing tactics. Overall, economically, I would say Wombat is slightly ahead with 35 mass a second versus 33, and overall on reclaim, if we check those numbers, WackyWombat also ahead by about 500 reclaim. But overall, the mass totals are about the same. Both teams, or both players, managing to grab up about the same amount of mass so far in this game. WackyWombat now ahead by about 100 mass. And it looks as though WackyWombat is about to be getting in an engagement over here. We have a bomber out on the field. Where is that bomber? It is up here in the north. It has not managed to kill off anything yet. Did drop a bomb to try and kill off some units, it would look like. Did not manage to kill them, and has itself dropping bombs now on more targets. But an interceptor coming out, those cyclones for the T1. The UEF interceptor going to shoot down the Scorcher. It's going to go down without being a very successful pilot, but hey, at the very least he got some scouting information with that bomber. And now we are into the stage of the game where both players have air, both players have land, and it's just going to be able to see who's aggressive enough to take more expansion and get themselves ahead. You have to take the initiative. It looks like Sub Q focusing a lot heavier on holding this middle circle instead of going for one of the expansions. I think this is a mistake. I think you have to more heavily prioritize the expansion. This middle area has... the entire middle circle has 8, 9, 10 mexes in total. You can get 10 mexes out of just one of the corners. Just focus on holding the corners. The middle is going to be so heavily contested, you're never going to be able to hold on to this middle area if it's an even game whatsoever. We do have strikers in the raiding formation, and by that I mean strikers out of WackyWombat trying to get some lucky kills on mass extractors, and instead are just going to find death and sadness. A transport now built up for Sub Q, going to be sending that to the southwestern expansion. We have a transport as well for WackyWombat trying to get down there. There's a lot of land spam out from Sub Q down here as well. I would like to see him have the heads up awareness not to drop his engineers right on top of a bunch of enemy strikers. He's going to be dropping them behind the enemy strikers. Less engineers for Sub Q. WackyWombat may end up getting the getting almost around to the bingo card, taking all 4 corners of the map, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. The Cyclones from earlier, the Cyclones did not go for the transport. That is just a mistake out from WackyWombat. Should have taken down that transport, stopped the expansion efforts. These engineers need to be given orders to build factories immediately. Get a factory up. Come on, do it. Stop sleeping on the job. You had an entire plane ride over here to take a nap. Come on, work. Do your job. Alright, well, those engineers, they're trying to find motivation to do their jobs, which, I mean, in this economy, am I right? But I don't even know what the fuck that means. Yeah, in this economy, I don't have any motivation. Actually, that's probably too relatable to way too many people, including myself. But that's okay, because as we all know, Willow is too broke to even pay attention, so we're going to have ourselves a striker that survived all of his allies dying, going forward with the PTSD of watching his friends die, and is going to try and kill off a Cyclone. Not going to be successful as a Scorcher comes through and ruins his entire career. And we have engineers over here. This is a hefty investment that you do not need to make. WackyWombat, if you are watching this, or if you're just watching this and trying to learn how to play a little bit of ladder, you do not need to build 2 PD. 1 PD will be enough if you're that worried about it. Building 2 is a waste of your resources. And right now, I'm pretty sure he does not have... Well, he has a mass to spare. He needs to start building power. It would be better if these engineers were building power instead of a radar. That radar is not even going to be exceptionally useful, as we do have, of course, power stallage for WackyWombat. Sub-Q, on the other hand, managing his economy pretty well. He is now probably producing a little bit too much power. He's probably overbuilt power, but that's okay. It's better than overbuilding most things in most games. Overbuilding a little bit of power can't really hurt you, other than that could have been a few more units on the field. Strikers over here going to be bombed down by some Scorchers out from Sub-Q, but the Strikers have managed to shut down this kind of proxy factory that was built up by Sub-Q near the expansion of WackyWombat. Going to be shut down entirely, and Sub-Q has managed to secure himself the southwestern area of the map. He's managed to get up 2 factories. He has engineers. They're still not doing their job. I mean, they did start the expansion and all that, and they got the expansion going, but they're still just kind of sitting around doing nothing. Fun fact, if you select a factory, you click on it. Oh, you select a factory, and then you give it a patrol route. Your engineers, at the very least, will reclaim. Maybe even repair stuff if you're not spending your eco properly. So that is something to be aware of. Having idle engineers is basically just a waste of time. And you can definitely have less idle engineers just by having every factory that you know is going to be building engineers just have some kind of order. Even an attack move, so that way they reclaim everything in a large area. A bit of tips and advice from Willow, the player who doesn't play ladder and is now critiquing low-level ladder players to make himself feel good. You know, that's just how it goes. Striker moving forward into enemy territory. This area has been heavily contested between Sub-Q and WackyWombat. WackyWombat coming out on top. Speaking of coming out on top, we do have Tech 2 already out for WackyWombat, and I don't believe we have anything of the sort. We do have T2 finishing up for Sub-Q. And let's just go ahead and check in on the overall economies at the 11-minute mark. We do have ourselves 49 mass a second for Sub-Q and 57 for WackyWombat. WackyWombat just a little bit ahead economically, and he's already managed to get up a decent amount of production of T2 units. He's starting to have those pillars come out on the field. Really happy to see him not spamming Mongoose. Mongoose, of course, just kind of inferior if you do not have the APM to make them cost effective. They're not worth building. And over here we have WackyWombat in engagement with his comm. He does have the gun upgrade on that comm, and that is going to give him enough firepower to be able to deal with this. And he of course has factories. Going to be having a Riptide hover tank coming out. An interesting choice. I guess it's alright against T1 units as it outranges most of the T1 units, but that lack of range is going to be a little bit difficult to deal with. Of course, you do have the added benefit of having more health and DPS on the Riptide, but its range tax is heavy. Now we have a raid coming out from Sub-Q. He's, of course, raiding up here, and that's being quite effective, but he's also raiding in this kind of middle area where there's not quite as much infrastructure or production built up as of yet. On the southwestern side, a push out from WackyWombat's going to start being incredibly cost effective, as he has nothing but T2 units out here just brawling it out with T1 units. Sure, the pillars will eventually die to enough spam, but the pillars will also be very good at killing off a few strikers for their efforts. Not good is him microing against himself, really. This incline really not helping out the pillars, and those Lobos getting a lot of cost-effective shots off onto the pillars. This trade should be going in the favor of WackyWombat, but the terrain mixed with the Lobos getting good shots is going to make it a little bit more difficult, but he is in the end looking to kill off this entire T1 army. I'd like to see a T2 investment down here. We have 2 T2 factories now being built up by SubQ in this southwest corner. He's going to need to get those up as soon as possible in order to be able to combat this, or start having T2 units come down from his main base. A bit of raiding going on still from WackyWombat. He's constantly put pressure on this area of the map, and it's starting to pay off, as SubQ now doesn't even have these mass extractors anymore, and now he's getting to the back line of the main base of SubQ. Could cause significant damage if SubQ does not notice. He could start losing T2 mass extractors, and when that happens, you're going to be in a tough situation economically to deal with anything your opponent throws at you. We have a bunch of pillars now coming in on an attack from WackyWombat. He's going to be sending out a lot of damage with this, and that T1 army just evaporating before our eyes. We do have T2 production up now, but more pillars beat less pillars in 99% of cases. The 1% being if there's an ACU that overcharges really well. But as there's no ACU down here, this is going to be a difficult hold. We are going to be seeing a lot of pillars coming out very quickly with all of this assistance on these factories, but is it going to be enough? It's going to be very difficult to deal with this. We have some T1 units that could come in and possibly get a flanking maneuver down onto these pillars, and that might be the saving grace that SubQ needs to hold on to the southwest expansion. If he loses this, he's going to be so behind economically. I do not see a world where he can win. We have T2 Air now finished it up for WackyWombat. We also had some factories get destroyed by what would be a tactical missile launcher out from SubQ, now sitting on 3 kills. Killing off those 2 T2 factories is going to slow down the production out from WackyWombat. We have a buzzkill tactical missile defense now coming online. Is it going to be enough? This next tactical missile will be shot down by the buzzkill. Oh no, it went for the T1 mass extractor. That is not a mass efficient trade. It costs more for you to throw that missile at your opponent than the cost of the mass extractor. Down here in the southwest, it looks like this area is going to collapse. We did get a PD online. Is this PD going to be the saving grace that is needed for SubQ to hold on to this location? I don't know. T2 support factories now going down. This PD is going to be able to kill off a couple more pillars, but it's not going to be enough, and this area is just a total loss for SubQ. And with some gunships now coming out onto the field with that T2 air advantage over his opponent. T2 air has been achieved by both players, but these gunships, these stingers, now starting to deal with these roaming bands of T1 units, and it's going to be very, very difficult for WackyWombat, or for SubQ to respond to WackyWombat, as he's now putting pressure on in the northeast, sending out units towards SubQ. Of course, this single file line tactic doesn't do super well. Mech Marines fighting pillars. The pillars will win that fight almost every time. The Mech Marines, of course, do have a good amount of DPS, but they are so fragile. We have T2 finished up for the comm of SubQ. He's starting to triad creep towards his opponent. We have T2 also on WackyWombat, I think. No, it's not T2. He has a T2 engineer, though, going to be building his own triads. And we have a lot of static defense coming out from SubQ, but that's not saving him at the moment. He needs to regain control of this southwest corner. He's behind economically by a large degree, 49 mass a second versus 59 mass a second. WackyWombat in a strong position to take care of this game. He also has a bunch of Stinger gunships built up. It could even be a possible snipe onto SubQ, but then again, SubQ does have, I think, enough interceptors to deal with these Stinger gunships. Not very many interceptors left on the map for WackyWombat. WackyWombat continuing to use his advantage in the northeast but it does look like he might be crumbling a little bit. The static defense gonna shoo away Sub-Q's unit, but in the southwest, it's just a dumpster fire for Sub-Q. As we reach closer to the 20-minute mark, we can look at Reclaim. Sub-Q now taking the lead with Reclaim at 8.1 thousand Reclaim total. He's managed to gain more mass this game in general than his opponent, despite being at an economic disadvantage from generated mass perspective. Over here in the back, I don't know what caused all of this to die, if this was a reclaim or intentional or not. It does look like it might have been intentional, as he's now building up some mass storage, but there were some dead factories in the back lines of Sub-Q's base. We have a large force. This force that took over the southwest is now moving north towards the main base of Sub-Q. Sub-Q needs to get some units out over here. He needs even these... Oh, he's upgrading factories at possibly not the greatest time. He also just needs more things to put in front of this army while he gets something to deal with this. Possibly get up some air solution to this. It does look like there's some Janus being built. Janus are good, but they take a lot of time to do their damage. Would like maybe a Stinger to help deal with this. The tanks continue to push in and are going to start doing damage to all of these factories that were built up right here. We have a Triad on the way for Sub-Q. But that Triad is going to take a while to deal with this. Even if he gets a few Triads, it'll be a difficult hold for him. And he's losing ground quite heavily. He's been forced back into his starting corner, and even there, he's kind of losing it. I just don't know where the units of Sub-Q are and what they're doing. There's a decent amount of units over here, but he had so many not so long ago, and they're just completely wiped out by this wave of pillars. He's trying to get T2 unit production back online and to a point where he can really deal some blows to this army, but now the tanks are just kind of in the base. Oh, it's a disaster. Oh my god. Sub-Q is just getting pummeled right now. Oh, that's gonna do... I don't know if that does friendly fire damage, but there's fire. His base is literally on fire. Admittedly, he set the fire. Oh, I set the fire. Everything's fine. I set this house on fire on purpose. Does Janus do friendly fire damage? I would think it would, right? It makes sense. This is going to be cleaned up, but the ever so prevalent caster question that we all have to ask is, at what cost? He lost a lot of power generators. He might be going into a power stall. No, he does have enough T2 P-gens to make up for that, but he's just completely given up map control, has no control of the map. He's about to be just absolutely surpassed in mass. As long as WackyWombat continues to eco up and grab up this southwest corner, he should just be overall ahead. Using gunships to stop this spam out from Sub-Q. He did lose a lot of units, so I guess you could ask at what cost for WackyWombat, as he did lose most of his army over here, but I think it was worth. I don't know if he got any major economic damage out of that, but he definitely killed off some factories and some P-gens. Actually, maybe it wasn't worth it, because now we have engineers out reclaiming for Sub-Q. This might be the master plan of Sub-Q. Let his enemies throw units at him until he can reclaim them and get money. Step 1, get punched in the face. Step 2, profit. We have Janus now over here dropping bombs onto these forces. There's no flak or anything. We do have some interceptors, some cyclones out from Wombat trying to deal with this, but there's definitely more interceptors out for Sub-Q, and Sub-Q is now going to take his pound of flesh and shoot down all of the interceptors WackyWombat has. This Janus gonna go down, but I'm pretty sure that Janus was cost effective. He even managed to kill off a couple of interceptors for the trouble. We now have a PD creep, a fire-based creep almost, for WackyWombat, just slowly building more defenses further forward. We also have some Flapjack missile launchers going to be killing off these Triads built up by Sub-Q just a few minutes ago. A push now out from Sub-Q heading south, but it's going to run into a bunch of Jesters, and this is just a losing battle. All of the pillars are going to be dead in just a minute, and then the T1 is going to take no time to die whatsoever. We have interceptors heading out towards those Stinger gunships, but a little bit too late on that front for those interceptors to be cost effective. We do have the interceptors now dying kind of in droves. This was, I don't know if that was a Shift G command or not to just try and kill as many gunships as possible, but never mind. The interceptor response out from WackyWombat is not great. He's not having his interceptors focus on the interceptors of Sub-Q, and Sub-Q going to get a few gunships for his trouble, but he's going to sacrifice a lot of interceptors for it. And of course, losing that second T1 air factory did not help him out very much. He did have the pyramid scheme of factories going over here, and now his pyramid has lost a corner, which is not the greatest situation, you know. Gunships continuing to deal damage to these forces out here on the eastern side, and as these players seemingly are taking a break and no longer punching each other in the face, I'm going to speed it up a little bit for us right now. Some of these spammed out units for Sub-Q going to be forced back. Let's go ahead and check on a couple of things. Do we have anything spicy happening? We do not have anybody going for T3 as far as I can tell. Janus now coming out into the field to try and help deal with this. These gunships are now over your territory. You can use your interceptors to deal with this, and he is sending his interceptors out to go deal with those gunships. And with that, most of the Stingers are going to be dead, if not all of them. Going to fly over some flak, which is going to mean the interceptors have to fly away. A push now out from WackyWombat towards the main base of Sub-Q does take out this little outpost that was built oh so long ago by Sub-Q, and now these units are going to be in a large fight, a brawl as they run across the map. And that is going to be Sub-Q forcing WackyWombat off of his land. He's managed to get him off the front lawn, but that is not enough. Now in the southwest, we can see WackyWombat now expanding to that area that was formerly held by Sub-Q, and that's going to be painful. Is Sub-Q continuing to reclaim around here? I don't see him doing much of that. Is he having trouble spending his mass? No, he's not. I'd like to see more reclaim going on. There's still a bunch of reclaim, just 2,000 on screen right now, and he could be getting a lot of mass for his troubles, but he is managing to keep up economically, now sitting at 63 mass a second versus 77, and of course reclaim making up for the difference as he's managed to reclaim only 1,000 more at this point. So he is kind of on WackyWombat now. WackyWombat has the map control, he has the initiative. Janus coming out, going to be causing a lot of damage to these forces out for WackyWombat. These Janus going to be extremely effective at dealing with his force until he can manage to get up some flak or just gain air control with his own interceptors. The Janus, of course, transforming whenever they enter air combat, which is a pretty cool transformation, honestly. And these players have seemingly calmed down for yet again just a moment. So let's speed this up for a little bit. We have a ton of T2 units now coming out of the base of Sub-Q. Sub-Q managing to get up T2 production on a pretty good scale, but needs to start expanding again. He has another transport coming down here, but this transport's going to be met with the fact that there's going to be a T1 PD finish by the time this lands. And these pillars may be able to kill off the PD, but do the engineers survive? Engineers may survive. One engineer does survive and is going to be building up a factory in this central area. We have another push out from Sub-Q heading south. There's not really all that much to defend down here. We have 3 T1 PD, oh, just one left over. We have a fire base trying to be built as fast as possible by all these engineers, but 4 of them are taking a coffee break. This is exactly what you see when you see a road crew doing construction. One guy is digging a hole and the other 4 are watching. Maybe that's just around here, but that does seem to be what I see every time I see road construction crews. You can see like 4 dudes watching, one dude just kind of sitting there doing all the work. If you're that one dude doing all the work, know that I appreciate you. Potholes suck. Large air engagement happening and going the way of Sub-Q, so Sub-Q now yet again ahead on the air front. And he's going to start trying to use that to bully WackyWombat off this southwest expansion. The engineer did end up going down. Janus are trying to be used to carpet bomb this entire area to doom. And oh my word, the fire bombing has commenced. Okay, yet again, Shift G, very useful. If you don't know how it works, go look up a guide on how to Shift G your units appropriately. Because a Shift G with that Janus pass could have been absolutely brutal. Man! Somebody call Michael Bay. That's what's going on right now. There's a Michael Bay film up in Fafland. As these players continue to duke it out with their T2 units. Nobody T3 yet. Maybe, or maybe I'm lying. Are you going for T3 yet? We do have T3 on the way for WackyWombat. I would figure he would be going for T3 first, and as he does have the economic advantage, and he is starting to get T3 on that main factory, but he's kind of in an awkward situation. His expansion to the southwest is a bit cut off due to this large T2 force out from Sub-Q. Sub-Q now having another large T2 force chasing units of WackyWombat down towards his main force, and that could be a disaster for WackyWombat if he gets caught in between these two large groups of pillars and various support units. Pair shields being used to try and increase the HP of the pillars, make them more cost effective. Pillars being very cheap and cost effective for the price, but not the best of the mainline tanks, at least in 1 versus 1 scenarios. But I guess it is a UEF mirror matchup, so we don't have to worry about the random obsidian showing up to ruin everything for the UEF pillars. A lot of interceptors flying over now. Going to be getting shot down by T1AA, but the air game is just entirely advantage to Sub-Q at the moment, using these Janus to try and pressure WackyWombat off of his turtling stance, trying to gain ground against WackyWombat by using the air power he achieved through mass interceptor. That poor... Wait, what? Why aren't you dropping bombs? Just drop bombs! Bomb them! You silly Janus. The large group of pillars out from WackyWombat now caught kind of in an awkward position, but it's the question of, are you trapped in this pincer with me, or am I trapped in this pincer with you? And it does look like a large force out from Sub-Q going to be destroyed by WackyWombat's units moving south towards his own base. Let's go ahead and check on the number of pillars for each side. 60 pillars, 5 pair of shields, some strikers, and the odd Lobo. And we have only 42 pillars out for WackyWombat. So there's definitely an advantage right now on the map for Sub-Q. Couple of pillars running to their death. We have another drop attempted by Sub-Q. This time it looks like it's mainly just engineers. Solely engineers. Is it going to be enough? There's still a bunch of factories down here. These factories can still produce units to try and deal with this engineer drop out from Sub-Q. Going to be dropping the engineers a bit short. Possibly going to throw up a couple of factories to just try and get enough units mustered up right here to deal with this. Now we have a large push out from Sub-Q towards the base of WackyWombat. As we just mentioned, he did have an advantage in pillar count, and also he is employing parashields, which will increase the combat effectiveness of his force as long as microed correctly, and it's a lot easier than microing Mongoose in my opinion. And he's being a bit timid with his force, but understandable as he's been behind so long this game. And overall, the mass generation difference is starting to rear its ugly head, as about 16,000, or about 12,000, sorry, 12 or 13,000 more mass has been accumulated from WackyWombat, despite him being, oh no, now he is ahead on reclaim. WackyWombat continuing to reclaim throughout this match. We started this match with 14,000 reclaim on the map. There is now 53,000, so if either of these players start tapping into the mass of reclaim reserves now left littered around the map, could spell disaster for the other player. We do have T3, of course, finished up. We have Titans now coming out onto the field. Sub Q, I wonder if he's noticed this just yet. WackyWombat sitting over here with T3 advantage. Do we have T3 on the way for Sub Q? We do not. Sub Q a bit behind. More power being built. Sub Q in a horrible power stall at the moment. And WackyWombat balancing his eco a little bit better than Sub Q at this given moment, at this time, at this freeze frame in time. The Titans now starting to push forward on this pillar force. The Titans, of course, not great against other T3 bots, but now gonna start dealing large amounts of damage to the opposing pillars of Sub Q. WackyWombat has been abusing his tech advantage the entire game. In the early game with the very early T2 tech and getting up those pillars. Now with the Titans going to be able to get a lot of damage done with those Titans and deal with a lot of this force out from Sub Q. Sub Q yet again in a situation where he just kind of has to fall back and take the punches. He can't really dish anything back out towards his opponent, but this factory build, this drop finally being successful, finally might push WackyWombat off this southwest expansion. But the question is, how long will it last? As now with the T3 advantage, once he gets up a decent amount of production for those T3 units, it's going to be a lot harder for Sub Q to hold on to this area unless he gets out his own T3. These Lobos down here being incredibly effective at getting rid of all of these structures built up by WackyWombat. We now have some strikers being built to deal with the opposing strikers that have been built out of these few factories. When you're in this situation where the enemy is spamming Lobos against you, by the way, just build Mech Marines. I'm pretty sure Mech Marines build faster, don't they? 1 second. Let me just check. Mech Marine takes 5 seconds to build versus 14, and Mech Marines have the DPS, and as long as they keep moving, the Lobos can't do much about it. The Titan and Pillar Force engaging again, but there's a lot of pillars here out for Sub Q, and there's not a lot of Titans here at the moment. There's not very many pillars on the ground for WackyWombat, so Sub Q might be winning this fight. I mean, after he kills off a couple of Titans, which he does definitely have enough forces here to deal with them, he can just continue to push forward, but there's a ticking time bomb on his force. He knows that the opponent has Titans. He knows that the T3 tech is going to be important to this game right now, and these Titans will eventually get high enough in number to really just kind of deal with them. The Titans trying to stop the large push of pillars. Is there enough Titans here to deal with this? There's about 5 or 6 Titans on the field. There's about 20, maybe 30 pillars. I don't know how that math adds up. I mean, I guess I can find out exactly how many pillars there are. There's 34 pillars versus 7 Titans at the moment. So that is going to be a... I don't know how this pans out, but the Titans are going down. The pillars are kind of just blocking the movement and allowing Lobo hits to land and deal a lot of damage to those Titans. Titans are going to be able to fall back. The walls have been built up to make it a little bit harder for Sub Q to be able to fight these Titans straight up. And the Titans continuing to deal damage to this army. We do have Janus now over here trying to deal with all of these point defense that have been spammed up by WackyWombat. Also going to be able to pick off these engineers if they are lucky. 1 interceptor versus 1 Janus. The interceptor is going to take a while, and the interceptor is actually just going to fly away. This Janus going to drop a bomb, kill off the last of the T2 engineers that's over here, so it's just these T1 PD defending this and 1 triad. Looking at the tech, we don't have T3 land even started for Sub Q yet. Sub Q just accepting the tech disadvantage. I don't know if that's the right play here. I think getting T3 land would be the better option for him in the long run. I guess he's kind of trying to bank on his air advantage saving him right now, trying to get enough damage done. The Pillars and Titans in a massive fight at the moment. The Pillars are slowly getting whittled down. The Titans' numbers not doing great either. These Titans not being microed means those Lobos got extra value. The Lobo does a ton of damage to units, and those Titans did manage to get dealt with, and there's still enough Pillars here to be a real threat against WackyWombat, but another wave of 4 Titans shows up to try and deal with the spam out from Sub-Q. I don't think Sub-Q is building enough Pillars to be able to fight all of these Titans that are just flowing out of these factories. We have a tactical missile launcher out from WackyWombat, lobbing missiles over towards the lands of Sub-Q. Does Sub-Q have tactical missile defense built up? No, he doesn't, and it looks like there may have been a Janus snipe that I have missed, but all of the power grid for Sub-Q has been destroyed. Everything's going to be on pause, at least temporarily. He needs so much power right now. There's a tactical missile on the way in, going to be most likely targeting another power plant. That's going to be a huge issue for Sub-Q. Needs to be able to deal with this very soon. Did that tactical missile impact on the side of the cliff? Oh, feels bad. I think it hit the terrain there, which feels really bad for WackyWombat, but he did take advantage of the fact that all of this was going on. I can't tell if all of the scorch marks on the ground are from the Januses earlier or from a possible air snipe onto that power grid. In the southwest, though, there's this production facility is still doing quite a bit. A bunch of control K's out on these factories, though. This production facility just being a thorn in the side of WackyWombat. He has these high-tech units, he just doesn't have enough of them to field them everywhere, and Sub-Q just throwing lower-tech units everywhere he can, trying to keep these units busy while his other units go out and grab more territory and take down factories and mexes alike. Overall mass generation 116 for Sub-Q versus 97 for WackyWombat, and he's not even stalling. So WackyWombat kind of just behind. He's lost enough mass extractors on the map, and he didn't have as many teched up in the back line. Either that or the economy, the ecoing for Sub-Q has been better. He managed to get up a T3 mass extractor. It doesn't have a shield, but that 27 mass a second definitely going to be helping his cause. Has a ton of production as well, and is just throwing units towards WackyWombat. I think this is where this pillar strategy is about to peter out. He doesn't have anything behind it to throw into these Titans, and these Titans are about to be killing off their last remaining army of Sub-Q. The Sub-Q still pushing in, gonna possibly even be able to pick up another T2 mech. I believe that one was T2, the one they just killed, and another one sitting right here, ripe for the picking. Gonna just continue to try and whittle down the economy. Has he gone for T3 yet? He has T3 air finished up. Does he have a T3 pigeon? He needs a T3 pigeon if he's gonna produce T3 air. That is just a point of it. It looks like it's being repaired, so going to need to see a T3 engineer come out of that momentarily. We have a bunch of engineers building a T2 pigeon, but if he wants any hope of building T3 air at any kind of speed, he just needs to. He's having trouble spending his mass, honestly, and I think it's because if he tries to spend his power, if he tries to spend his mass, he's going to power stall. His base a little bit idle. Down here to the southeast, the Titan number has grown. There's enough Titans here to start really contesting this army. He was in an awkward position there for a little while, but now sitting on 16 Titans, going to be able to deal with these mass pillar armies a lot better, and this number is just going to keep growing as long as he continues to spam the Titans. Titans now pushing into the pillar force, which is just severely diminished compared to what it was just a few minutes ago. More factories being built up by Sub-Q to try and continue to contain WackyWombat, but WackyWombat now getting out onto the map with the Titans is going to be able to deal significant damage. As long as he can keep the Titans moving, he's going to be in a good position. Still no T3 land. We have T3 air, but what's your answer to this Titan spam? Are you going to go for a snipe on the comm? Are you feeling boxed into a corner? Or are you going to go for broadsword spam and hope that you maintain a T3 air advantage long enough to keep the broadswords and manage to get up ASFs before your opponent? Broadsword spam could be a legitimate tactic here, as they are pretty effective at killing off Titans. They can kill them off very quickly. Of course, highest DPS T3 air unit, able to deal out a lot of damage in a very short amount of time with those broadswords. One of the best features of the UEF, other than the fact that their T2 gunship is also a transport, and you can technically put mech marines on them so you can get a gunship with a gunship. It's pretty good. It's pretty dope. And if you didn't know that, you should play a little bit more UEF and, you know, pick up those mech marines on them and give a little bit more damage to your UEF gunships. The Titans now making their way towards the main base of Sub-Q. Sub-Q going to be in a very difficult situation in the next 2 to 3 minutes. He's going to be in a situation where he needs to answer this. He's kind of been stalling, trying to ignore all of these Titans coming out onto the map. And you know how we checked a second ago and saw 16 Titans? We're at 41 now. This is enough Titans to deal with pretty much any T2 army as long as all these Titans group up. And now he has enough Titans to do what I was talking about earlier, have enough pretty much everywhere to start taking complete map control again. Sub-Q finally wrestling back map control after 30 minutes of being knocked down. And now he's under risk of losing again, and it looks like he's going for the snipe. Ambassadors are being produced. The question is, are there enough interceptors to try and deal with this, and does he have T3 on the comm? He does have T3 on the comm. He can start building those SAMs. If the SAMs get killed off by this ground army, though, that would be significant. But the pillars are evaporating so quickly to all of these Titans. These Titans dealing massive damage to all of these pillars. And, oh, the pillars are going down in droves. The UEF fires of war continue. All of these Titans now gunning down the pillars. We have Janus trying to throw damage down onto the comm. And we have Strat Bombers now out. WackyWombat getting shot by 2 Strat Bombers at a time. Is this enough? Are there enough interceptors? Janus now getting involved, trying to be pseudo ASF to try and deal with these Strat Bombers. Strat Bombers being spammed out as fast as physically possible for Sub-Q. If he can manage to get this snipe, he wins. If he does not get this snipe, this game is ostensibly over. WackyWombat now down to 14,000 HP, 15,000 HP. Gets hit by another Strat Bomb down to 11,000 HP. 2 more Strat Bombers coming in. He's trying to dodge the Strat Bomb damage, but it's very difficult. 9,000 HP left on him, but his ASF, by that I mean his Janus, his interceptor count is so low. He needs to get underneath the shield. He needs to build a SAM, do something to stay alive, but I don't think it's going to happen as another Strat Bomber comes in, bringing him sub 1,000 HP. One more Strat Bomb landing kills him, and that's the end of WackyWombat in this 47-minute long slog of a game between these two players. Sub-Q comes out on top right before he would have died to the Titan wave. Thank you all for watching. If you liked, please like and subscribe. I am so sorry. I'm sure I mentioned it in post, but for the lack of content, it's going to be coming back more steadily. I'm pretty sure at the beginning of this video I have like some kind of fancy cut, skip, whatever, where I stop after the intro and I explain all this, but still, I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you to my patrons, Idle Betazoid, Icy Nightmare, Sergeant Syphilis, Nogthar, I'm forgetting one. Icy Nightmare, Sergeant Syphilis, Nogthar, Idle Betazoid, Mutant Gene Pool. Which one am I forgetting? If I forgot, if you're the Patreon I forgot, I am immensely sorry, but also take into account I'm recording this after being up for like 30 hours, so yeah. Either way, have a good one. You all are beautiful. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!